Commander Zexathel's three eyes focused on the blue-green planet rotating slowly on the holographic display. Earth, the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star. The invasion fleet had been in orbit for 6 standard cycles now, conducting reconnaissance and cataloging the dominant species before the conquest began. "The preliminary data is complete, Commander," announced Science Officer Krill, her mandibles clicking with what Zexathel recognized as confusion. "But I must confess the results are unusual." "Unusual how?" Zexathel leaned forward in his command throne, his chitinous exoskeleton creaking slightly. "The dominant species calls themselves humans. They are bipedal, carbon-based, and possess only 2 optical sensors. Physically, they appear quite vulnerable. Thin skin, no natural armor, no venomous glands, minimal claws." Krill paused, her antennae twitching. By all metrics, they should not be the apex species on this planet. "There are numerous creatures far more formidable." Zexathel's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Then this will be even easier than we anticipated. Deploy the observation drones. I want to see these humans in their natural habitat before we initiate contact protocols." 3 hours later, Zexathel stood frozen before the main view screen, his 3 eyes wide with something he hadn't felt in decades: primal fear. The drone's footage played in crystal clarity. It showed a human male, identified as Marcus Chen by intercepted data transmissions, in a densely forested region the humans called Alaska. The human appeared to be engaged in some sort of recreational activity, carrying a primitive projectile weapon and a small pack of supplies. Then the creature appeared. "That is an Ursus arctos horribilis." Krill's voice trembled as she read from her datapad. Local designation grizzly bear. Mass approximately 360 of their kilograms. Bite force sufficient to crush bone. Claws measuring up to 10 centimeters. Running speed. "I can see it, Krill," Zexathel interrupted, unable to look away from the screen. The bear had emerged from the undergrowth, startled by the human's presence. It reared up on its hind legs, standing at least 9 feet tall, and released a roar that the drone's audio sensors captured in terrifying detail. By all logical calculations, the human should have fled, or been paralyzed by fear, or died. Instead, Marcus Chen did something that would be discussed in Zexathel's fleet for generations to come. He stood his ground. The human raised his arms, making himself appear larger, and released a sound from his throat. Not a scream of terror, but a deep, aggressive shout. "Hey, get back!" "Go on!" The bear dropped to all fours and charged. What happened next occurred in less than 3 seconds but would require hours of analysis to fully comprehend. The human's weapon had somehow been knocked away in the initial clash. As the bear closed the distance, Marcus Chen didn't run. He moved forward into the attack. The human ducked under the bear's first swipe, rolled to the side, and grabbed a fallen tree branch. He swung it with surprising force across the bear's snout. The bear roared and lunged again. This time the human drove his fist, his bare hand, into the creature's nose, then used his other arm to jab at its eyes. "By the void," whispered Tactical Officer Vrim from his station. "Is that human trying to establish dominance?" The struggle continued. The human took a glancing blow from the bear's claws, shredding his outer covering and leaving red streaks across his arm. But instead of weakening, the human seemed to become more aggressive. He shouted something that the translator rendered as, "Not today," and grabbed a jagged rock. The next few moments were a blur of motion. The human moved with a ferocity that seemed to surprise even the bear. He struck at vulnerable points, eyes, nose, ears, with calculated precision despite the chaos. When the bear reared back again, Marcus Chen did something that made every being on the bridge question their invasion plans. He roared back. Not a human shout. Not a battle cry. A primal, guttural sound that came from somewhere deep in his evolved biology. An echo of something ancient and terrifying that had somehow survived in these seemingly fragile creatures. The bear, bloodied and confused, made a decision that resonated with every member of Zexathel's crew. It ran away. The human stood there, breathing heavily, blood running down his arm, and watched the bear retreat into the forest. Then he picked up his weapon, checked his wounds with a calm efficiency that suggested this was merely an inconvenience, and continued walking deeper into the wilderness. The bridge was silent for a full minute. "Commander," Krill finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, I have completed a deeper analysis of human history while you watched that footage. And they evolved as persistence hunters, Commander. They would chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies can regulate temperature through liquid secretion, allowing them to continue when other creatures must rest. They have a pain tolerance that increases during conflict due to chemical compounds their brains produce. They call it adrenaline. Krill's hands trembled as she scrolled through more data. They domesticated wolves, apex predators, and turned them into companions. They developed weapons that can strike from distances our shields cannot detect. They split atoms and created artificial suns. They have survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars against their own kind. And despite having no natural armor, no venom, no enhanced strength, they became the dominant species on a planet filled with creatures designed to kill. She looked up at Zexthal with all four of her eyes. Commander, they don't survive because they are strong. They survive because they refuse to stop. Zexthal stared at the frozen image on the screen. A bleeding human, standing alone in the forest, victorious against a creature that outweighed him by hundreds of pounds. Helm, he said quietly, set course for the Andromeda sector. Sir? The helmsman's confusion was evident. The invasion is cancelled. We're leaving. But Commander, we have overwhelming force. Our weapons, our numbers. Zexthal turned to face his crew, and they saw something in his eyes they had never seen before. Wisdom born of terror. We have overwhelming force against enemies who know when they are beaten. These humans? He gestured at the screen. They fight bears with their bare hands. For recreation. Imagine what they would do to us if we threatened their world. As the fleet turned away from Earth, accelerating toward the safety of deep space, Zexthal filed his report to the Galactic Council. Its conclusion was simple. Invasion of Sol 3 not recommended. Native species classified as Class 12 Death World survivors. Approach with extreme caution or preferably not at all. Recommend marking system as restricted zone. Far below, unaware that he had just saved his planet from invasion, Marcus Chen reached his campsite, bandaged his arm with supplies from his first aid kit, and started a fire to cook dinner. Tomorrow he thought he'd try fishing. It was, after all, his vacation.